What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the current state of World of Warcraft's new expansion, Dragonflight's Mythic Plus, and we're going to go over a few things. I want to note that some of the things that I will be talking about, I've seen a lot of other people talk about. 100% wasn't exactly my idea for certain things originally. I completely agree with them, which is why I'm bringing them up. I'm going to talk about some of the issues with Mythic Plus right now, and especially because I mostly pug. I play with one, two, maybe three friends, and then we usually have another pug. Rarely had a full group in my entirety of pugging this season. And this is coming from somebody who's I'm borderline 2400 IO. Um, I'm not up there with the 3K guys. I'm not pushing 22s and 23s. I'm pretty much according to Raider.io, top 4%, right? And when you're comparing that to the top players, obviously their opinions can differ. And I'm sure that a lot of people in lower pugs are kind of feeling the same pain. Um, One of the biggest topics that I wanted to bring up was thundering. Thundering is probably one of the worst seasonal affixes I've seen. I've been playing Mythic Plus since BFA Season 4, and usually the seasonal affix is something that you would genuinely love to have, right? So in BFA Season 4, you had the obelisks that help you skip areas of the dungeon that you didn't want to do, um, set you up properly. Season 1 of or just in Shadowlands altogether, you've had those the big red dudes who gave you guys the buffs, right? You've had um, the three mobs, and one of them gave you like certain buffs and stuff like that. And then even like um, the guy at the end of Shadowlands who gave you your personal secondary buff that you would want, right? The more Necrolords you killed, the more buff you got, the percentage, everything was good. The problem that we're dealing with now is Thundering. One, you have 15 seconds you have to connect with somebody else. Now, three people get positive, two people get negative, right? One of the issues with Thundering is if you walk over, like let's say two positives connect over somebody who's a negative, they could both clear on that one negative, right? Or vice versa. If it's two negatives, they can both clear on one positive. Now you've got two guys with positive, and sometimes it stuns you. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does. It's a little wonky. But all you're really fighting for is 10 seconds of a 30% increase to damage and increased healing, which compared to any of the other seasonal affixes, it feels more like a chore that's do or die versus, hey, this is something like we do a little something extra, we're going to get something extra. Because, I mean, 10 seconds of a buff is practically nothing, and there's got to be a give and take for it, right? There's got to be a pros and cons to it. The pro is you get 10 seconds of, or ideally 10 seconds of 30-second or 30% damage increase and increased healing. Whereas the con is, oh, you'll get stunned. And if you're in the middle of a pool during this, you're more than likely going to die if you don't connect. Another issue with all of that being said is tanks. Tanks should always have positive, but instead it shifts between positive and negative. So if I'm carrying mobs around and not trying to aim it at my team because there's frontals, more than likely I'm going to get stunned or I'm going to drag a frontal. And it sucks because now I have to hope that somebody realizes that I can't go to you. Then they have to come to me. And we're talking about pugs still. So I'm not in Discord with these people. I'm not I have no communication or anything like that. Now, with me complaining about a lot of these things, I do want to bring up ways that it could be fixed, right? If you do not want to change Thundering at all, at least at the bare minimum, nerf the stun, make it to where tanks are always positive. That is the best way for me to kind of say, okay, you know what, we'll deal with this. It is what it is, right? Um, or one of the things I've heard for Thundering that I think is a fantastic idea is where you have 15 seconds to connect with somebody and you get a 30% damage increase for a certain amount of time, let's say 30 seconds, right? That right there says, hey, go get your buff. If you don't get your buff by connecting with somebody, then you just don't get your 30% damage increase. You don't have to stun. And by the way, these thundering stuns are what's killing certain groups. It's killing keys. A seasonal affix shouldn't be the make or break to that extent, right? I think it should 100% be here's a reward if you do this little quote unquote mini game, right? Um, that's my biggest take on Thundering. I think Thundering is not fun. I've been saying that since literally day one, Mythic Plus release, whenever we were already doing like 10 keys, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel great, and then you get the little weak aura, and then it still doesn't feel that great, because you're having to focus on clearing all the time, or else you're just gonna die. And to me, it's not how we shouldn't be punishing players. We shouldn't be putting them on the brink of failing keys, especially when you're doing 18s, 19s, 20s, stuff like that. With mobs having frontals and stuff like that, there has to be some kind of fix somewhere for Thundering. We'll move on for Thundering. That's my biggest take on that. I hope somebody from Blizzard is listening to either this or all the other streamers of big names or anybody on Twitter and stuff like that that is putting this out there and saying, hey, we really do need to fix this because our player base doesn't like it. And I would say that Blizzard has done a pretty decent job of listening to the player base. I think the only thing on top of that I would say is maybe the creation catalyst should have dropped when Mythic Plus and Raid dropped. I think that Blizzard, and this is my second point, I think Blizzard equates a lot of things like when they're putting things out or how things should be done to the top 0.01% of people, right? The guys that are doing Race the World first, the guys who are doing the Great Push, and guys who are doing MDI style stuff, the guys who are pushing really high keys, coordinated teams, better players. I feel like there's too much of that. I cannot tell you how many pieces of gear I've gotten out of a dungeon that I don't need that somebody else needs and I can't trade it because of a 2 or 3 item level difference. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I think in this situation you have to be like, hey, we can't focus on the 0.01% of people and then still like the average player doesn't care that these guys run heroic 4 different times and trade all the best gear to their mains. It doesn't matter. Every guild's gonna do it, so it's not like anybody's got the upper hand, right? It's not like Liquid would do that, and Echo's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'd rather just, fend for ourselves, right? Um, so I think the first problem, Thundering, second problem, were really feeding into let's do things based off of the professional players, the players that are really skilled and stuff like that, versus the average or even more casual players than even what I am, So that's just something I would love to see, that the changes aren't being based off of that because that is such a small portion of the player base. Let's talk about pugs and let's talk about the affixes. One of my biggest things about pugs is that there's nothing against them just leaving keys, and it's happening all the time. I don't remember. I saw something in my feed that somebody had kind of blocked out who the streamer was, but the guy got to the first boss in Temple of the Jade Serpent 2 different times, 2 different dungeons, and somebody just leaves, no deaths, just leaves at the first boss, right? Um, Shadow Moon Burial Ground, one of the most forgiving dungeons in this entire expansion. And if you don't believe me, I just uploaded a video yesterday showing that we had 27 deaths in the 18 that we're about to run, and we time it, right? But when you're doing something at a 18, 19, or 20 level, I mean, even this happens in lower keys too, but I'm saying I've noticed a lot more because I'm just doing these somewhat higher keys. Is people are just leaving at the slightest inconvenience of something happening. So I think there needs to be something implemented to say, hey, like if you're just gonna keep leaving keys, or it could detect whether how many deaths there are, or if it's within reason. I mean, leaving on the first boss of these keys, or leaving when there's no deaths, if somebody hurts your feelings or says something or whatever is going on, and screwing over the three other people who aren't even having a conversation with you, most likely, needs to have something implemented. I'm not saying ban all these people, right? I've been in queues where the damage is super low, where we've died twice to a random packs of mobs before even the first boss, right? It happens, and it's just so the dungeon is too high for the group overall, right? That is something that happens. Um, but in most of these cases, it's just people leaving. I've had people leave in the first week of the expansion. In the first week, or I'm sorry, the first week of Mythic Plus, because we weren't going to time the dungeon, right? And we're talking like, hey, we're all like 370 item level, and we're doing like a 6 or an 8. And it turns out we weren't going to time a key. And they just leave. And we're like, what? They go, hey, they type in chat, hey, I'm not going to get an IO for this, and this is the only reason I'm here. You're 370 item level. There's no way it's the only reason you're here, right? Now, like I said, I'm not saying ban these people, but put something in the game so these people get punished for just leaving all these keys. It is such a waste of time. Let's say you get to the third boss in Halls of Valor, right? Or you get to the boss, um, you get to Fenrir, or if you do it the other way and you go to Herja, and you leave that key. I wasted time flying the Halls of Valor, which takes forever. Then you summon people, and then you get into the dungeon. You put out a feast. You put all your stuff on. Then you do a ready check. Then you do a 10-second pull timer. Then you put the key in, and then you have 10 seconds till the dungeon starts. Then you got to pull all the mobs, do the first boss, do the second boss, and then someone realizes, oh, well, we're not going to time this. I'm out. Some of us just are okay with vault. Some of us are okay with just not repeating the key at a certain point. Now, if the group can collectively say, "Hey, yeah, let's just not do this," obviously, no one they're not just going to report each other, right? So these random people that go into these keys and then brick them, there should be something done. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not. I don't run a gaming company or anything like that, but it's painful to do the keys when people are leaving constantly. And I have 5 alts. Leaving keys for me. Look, I have to at least finish as many keys as I can on all these alts, or else that's a massive waste of time, and that sucks. It sucks when you're wasting time on alts when you're just trying to get 4 keys done a piece and then go back to your main and start pushing the IO. With that also being said, the affixes. We talked about thundering already, but this is more so like the variety and then what we do have. Now, I am super grateful we got rid of necrotic. Necrotic was the worst affix ever because one, nobody played that week, and then two, when the tanks did play, they had to kite the entire time. And then necrotic was so bad in dungeons you can't just sit there and kite every pull. You hit a cap on how high of a key you could do at that point, you know? So I'm not really complaining that we got rid of necrotic. I think it's a beautiful thing that they have done. It was so smart. I'm so happy. Like, there's not a whole week where I have to play a DPS class and get minimal level key done. So with that being said, we got Grievous the first week. 2 weeks later we get Bursting Grievous. And then 2 weeks later we get Grievous again. You know how hard it is to find healers that want to heal on a Grievous week, or even healers that can. It sucks. There has to be more variety, and if you have tuning done properly, if you did a baseline tuning where you got rid of Tyrannical, you got rid of Fortified, and you had baseline, and you kind of wanted affixes to be more of what the difficulty of the week was, no one's complaining about that. That'd be fantastic, because then you don't have people who, because the player base looks at it like this: I want to push on a Fortified week. And then you got some players that are like, yeah, I like Tyrannical a lot better. My single target's great. We can nuke all the mobs leading up to it. And then it's easy day, right? If you had a baseline set for all these dungeons, you don't have issues like the tree boss in Algathar Academy, just nuking people every other week, right? Luckily, it got nerfed, but You don't want to deal with that. You don't have to deal with waiting for tuning to happen because sometimes it takes a week. Sometimes you have to wait until enough high-end players complain about it before WoW devs are like, "Yo, we should nerf this because players aren't doing this dungeon, or most people who have done this dungeon have failed it because of this." So that's just that. That's my piece on it. Is you know I think pugs should be held. I mean, people should be held more accountable with these keys and not breaking them. Thundering needs a whole new rework, or just get rid of it and give us something different that's actually going to be fun, or the pro is way better than the con. I don't think that a 30% damage increase for 10 seconds is at all equal to you getting stunned and wiping at all. I don't believe that that is hand in hand the same thing on both ends. So that's just my piece. I wanted to talk about the current state of Dragonflight. I know it was a lot of complaining, but this is more of just a hey, like, can we kind of listen to the player base? And I look, a lot of these thoughts I've gotten from every other player, the average player who's playing. I've got it from casuals. I've got it from hardcore players. So it's not like I'm speaking for just myself. I know that a good handful of people would agree that some of these things need changes, right? With that also being said, it feels like in Dragonflight, Blizzard is listening to a lot of complaints that we are having as players, and they're trying to fix them. And I appreciate that. And I don't want that to be seen like, hey, I'm just complaining, like Blizzard this, Blizzard that. Like, no, no, no. It's okay, right? We're still able to do keys. We're still able to finish stuff with pogs. We are able to handle thundering to an extent, but sometimes it's too much. But if I had to give my final opinion on what how the current state of Mythic Plus is going, I put it a little above average. I think we have a good bit of players. It doesn't feel nearly as dead as Shadowlands felt, and I want to say I do appreciate that Blizzard has stepped up and done a lot of work with this expansion. Um, if you guys have anything you guys want to add, put it in the comments below. If there's enough things that I didn't talk about that you guys wanted to hear my opinion about, I can make a part 2 video, but ideally this is kind of what I'm this is a current state of Mythic Plus, and then I will make a video at the end of season 1 of what my overall opinion was. If they don't change Thundering at all, then my opinion by the end of you know season 1 is it's going to be pretty poor. And not that that matters, but you know that's how I feel about it. I think a lot of players would be upset. Um, leave a like, comment down below. Like I said, anything if you guys agree, disagree, stuff like that. Um, if you guys want to see more content like what I've been posting, I'm posting a lot of WoW content. A lot of my viewers actually enjoy the WoW content, so I'm going to continue making it. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.